Hi, everybody. This is Allison from Alley Cat Creations. How are you? Please like, share, and subscribe to my channel if you have yet to do so. And if you get anything from my work, a connect down epiphany, a mind explosion, a new book to read, a new author to explore, artwork to create, please consider supporting my work. All the links are at the bottom of the description. AlleyCatCreations211.com is where you can see the paint and sip paintings, the crafts and sips, pyramids, drawings, artwork, all of it will be on my website. I do have to update it, FYI. I don't got the newest stuff on, but there's plenty to look at. So please check it out. And if you're interested in purchasing anything or customization on anything, please email me. The best way to get to me. 3D is a tier on my channel. It's a channel membership. And if you become a channel member, you get a free entry into my raffles once a month and channel only member content, which at the moment I do once a week oracle readings. So I do a lot of things to say thank you to the people who support me. Nice energy exchange. So please consider supporting me that way. I haven't had income in 2 months. I go back to work in August, but things have been extremely rough. So anything that you guys feel in your heart to do, whether it be purchasing something or just helping me out in any way that you can, like, share, and subscribe, that would be a blessing. And thank you for those of you who already do those things. The Inner Radiance, Chapter 10. Transmigration, Part 2. The Atoms. Can't wait. Quote, occultism teaches that the life atoms of our life principle, prana, are never entirely lost when a man dies. That the atoms best impregnated with the life principle and independent, eternal, conscious factor are partially transmitted from father to son by hereditary and are partially drawn once more together and become the animating principle of the new body in every new incarnation. As the individual soul is ever the same, so are the atoms of the lower principles, the body, its astral or life double. Drawn as they are by affinity and karmic law, always to the same individuality in a series of various bodies. End quote. The Secret Doctrine, Blavatsky. Quote, and the Lord God formed, evolved the body of man out of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of spiritual life, the spiritual man. And man became a living soul. End quote. Genesis. It'll give you little hints there. During the later part of the last century, in the days of gross materialism in science, the definition of the atom was the smallest particle of matter that could exist alone. We have advanced. The ultimate indivisible particle of matter. But from the astounding discoveries of this century concerning radioactivity, we now know that the atom is not indivisible. Indeed, that the atom is not matter at all as we are accustomed to view it. The atom is now defined as a center of force, a phase of electrical phenomena, a center of energy, active through its own internal makeup and giving off energy or heat or radiation. This atom or center of force is made up of central positively charged nucleus called a proton, surrounded by a cluster of negatively charged corpuscles called electrons and neutrons, which revolve around the nucleus in orbits corresponding relatively to the orbits of the planets about the sun of our solar system, proving the same grand plan of manifestation exists from cosmos to atom. These combinations of electrons or atomic clusters impress our senses with the various characteristics of matter, according to the arrangement of the various electrons in the cluster. And just as the arrangement or aspects of the planets at the time of birth indicate the main characteristics which the incarnating soul must manifest or encounter, so if we could view the predominating arrangement of the electrons in the atoms of our bodies and correlate them with the planetary aspects, then would astrology be exact science it was of old instead of the art it is today. Like the planets of our solar system, the atoms have their cycle of activity, or manvaratas, and their cycles of disintegration and inactivity, or prayalayas. As each planet begins its period of manifestation, the same old atoms of which it was composed during its previous manvaratas, or cycles of objective manifestation, are once more attracted around its nucleus, first as fire mist, then an astral substance, and then as the mineral kingdom or dust of the ground. Thus is the physical planet as we know it materialized out of its invisible Laya center. As the various forms of life appear, the atoms of the mineral kingdom are built into these forms, first transmigrating into the vegetable kingdom, then into the animal, and finally are so advanced that they can be used to make up the body of man. Just as the nucleus of each atom exercises a selective action and attracts to itself only such electrons as are affinitized to it, so does each cell of the body in each form of life attract to itself through affinity those atoms in its environment which will best contribute to the manifestation of the particular form. The body cell selects the particular substances it needs from the food given it. The plant selects from the mineral kingdom, also from the air and water, the particular atoms needed by its species. The animal selects the particular plants or animals best suited for its food, and man selects from all the kingdoms as food through the selective action of taste and appetite, that which contains the atom necessary for his particular stage of unfoldment. If man was careful to follow the guidance of the subconscious mind of his animal soul as to food and eat it properly, masticate it thoroughly in reasonable amounts, and did not insist that everyone else should follow his tastes, idiosyncrasies, and theories, there would be no such thing as ingestion or few intestinal diseases. Just as the positive radioactive nucleus of the atom is constantly bombarding and impressing upon the electrons which make up its cluster or body the characteristics of its own emanations, just so does the radioactive nucleus of life force or soul. In each form of life, vegetable, animal, and human, impress its characteristics and stage of evolution upon all the atoms composing its body, thus raising those atoms to its vibratory rate and stage of evolution. The atoms therefore advance in evolution according to the stage of evolution of the forms of which they are a part. Also, advanced atoms transmigrating into lower forms help to promote the evolution of those forms. Thus does law of compensation adjust and compensate for the sacrifice of one form of life to another. Through the life forces gradually raising the vibratory rate of the atoms in higher forms, it becomes possible for still higher and finer and more intelligent forms to be built up and evolve, such as the dog, horse, elephant, capable and worthy of associating with man. Finally, atoms are evolved, which are so impressed with the vibrations of intelligence of the highest forms through which they have transmutated migrated, that they are fit to be used in building up a brain for man, which is capable of responding to the vibrations of the higher mental world, even as the animals respond to the lower, ultimately to spiritual aspirations and longings for something more than the material world can supply. Only when such a form was evolved through the ages could the spiritual being, which is the real self, created in the image of God, descend from the higher worlds and incarnate it. Again, we see how impossible it would be for the human soul to incarnate in any animal form lower than man. It is through this human body and not that of lower animal that the soul must continue the unfolding of its spiritual qualities and powers in the world of matter, and through it work out the unadjusted karma generated during previous incarnations on this and other planets. Other planets. Don't tell anybody, it's the other planets. Oops. The study of reincarnation teaches us that not all souls born here on Earth began their evolution in matter on this planet. Only those who emanated from the planetary ruler of the Earth. It is only these latter who are properly called Earth children. These are less unfolded spiritually because they have less experience in material conditions on this or other planets, hence are largely concerned with the lower and more material interests in life. These make up the majority of mankind. But vast numbers of souls also come from the moon chain, and lesser numbers come from other planets to learn the lessons of Earth. After having learned many and deep lessons during the period of rest, Pralaya, between planets, the egos from the moon chain incarnated on this new planet, Earth, to continue the mastery of the problems and forces left unconquered on the previous planet, and also to teach and help onward those less advanced than themselves. Thus, everywhere do we see continual unfoldment, evolution, and advance. Even the globe itself belongs to a higher octave than globes of the previous moon chain. Octave dimensions, densities. Naturally, there are millions of atoms upon which each soul has placed the radioactive imprint of its stage of unfoldment. In the early days of mankind, when the animal form was untrained and incapable of responding consciously to the indwelling soul, the animal selfishness, passions, and desires predominated and impressed their vibrations upon the atoms of the body. As these atoms were thrown off, they were built into lower kingdoms and thus carried with them the vibrations of cruelty, enmity, impurity, and antagonism, with which the largely animal man had impressed them. Need we be surprised, therefore, to find that instead of all the lower forms of life cooperating with man in peace and harmony, there are many forms in each kingdom, poisonous minerals and gases, pathogenic bacteria, poisonous plants, blights, and fungi, insects and animals, which are antagonistic to man? Are we, as we have said elsewhere, the curse which God is represented as placing on the lower kingdoms when man was turned out of Eden was in reality a prophecy of the karma which man must continue to reap from the lower kingdoms because of the forces he placed upon them. His resulting suffering and death slowly bring about an awakening to his true heritage, his power as priest to bless all kingdoms. And verily, just as the curse has operated and still operates today, so shall the blessing upon and until someday man shall find himself king and ruler over all the kingdoms of the earth. Since by man came evil, sin, sickness, and death into the world, even so by man must come the redemption of the earth from all such disintegrating and antagonistic forces. Hence, the sooner man begins to learn this mighty lesson of personal responsibility for the conditions of his life and environment, the sooner will both humanity and the lower kingdoms obtain their true place in the divine plan. Bum, bum, bum. The millions of atoms upon which the soul has placed the imprint of its imperfections and perfections must be taken up again and again, be built into its new bodies during many incarnations, each time taking them at least one step upward as it advances through experiencing the karma and conquering the conditions encountered on the path of spiritualization. For as man advances and radiates higher forces, he raises the vibratory rate of the atoms which he embodies. If the qualities which the soul is unfolding at a particular time attract atoms whose transmigrations have been largely through forms in the vegetable kingdom, such atoms naturally begin to preponderant essence of the kingdom, and each a person would naturally crave a largely vegetarian diet. If one's evolution needs and attracts atoms whose transmigrations have been largely through animal forms, they would bring the vibrations of the kingdom, and such as one would naturally desire and need the vibrations of animal food, milk, butter, cheese, eggs, which often bring the animal vibrations almost as much as meat. But most of us are unfolding more than one important quality and have many atoms from all kingdoms, hence need, enjoy, and thrive best upon a mixed diet. Hence, there are no two persons exactly alike or who continuously need exactly the same food combinations. I say this all the time. Bye. Stop fighting over things that this is high vibrational, and that's high vibrational. Stop fighting and stop judging. Love you. When there is any great change, either gradual or rapid in the character of our unfoldment or in large numbers of our atoms, our desire for certain foods changes, often quite suddenly. In cases, the desire of animal soul's subconscious mind for a change of food should be followed by controlled by reason. But to force oneself to subsist on a particular diet that is not appetizing or satisfying just because someone tells us it will advance us spiritually is only postponing our taking in the transmigration atoms for which we are responsible and to which we are attracted by our natural appetites and which are waiting to be redeemed and spiritualized by us. For some time later on in our evolution, we will have to go back and take up these atoms, perhaps at a time when it will be much more hampering to do so than now at their normal time for such transmutation. One thing we should keep clearly in mind. Spirituality does not come from the stomach, it comes from the heart. Our food should be that which satisfies our taste and appetite and which makes our bodies positive and full of energy and efficiency, and our spirits happy. Physical food needs the physical body, not the soul. Holy crap, love them! If our diet leaves us pale, anemic, negative, irritable, cranky towards others, and lacking in energy and positive magnetism, then obviously it is not the right diet for us, no matter what the theories of other people. But in any case, we should not let our food occupy too great a part of our attention or thoughts, but keep it in its proper place as a mere detail of our physical supply. In no case should we allow thoughts about food or vibrations brought to us from either vegetable or animal kingdom to dominate us, but should place upon every atom we take in the keynote or impress our present stage of spiritual unfoldment and make all subservient to our uses and welfare. Just give it Thanksgiving. Just as the sun, as the positive nucleus of our solar system, attracts the planets necessary for the manifestation of its system and holds them under the radioactive bombardment of its rays, and just as the proteonic nucleus of the atom attracts the electrons necessary for the manifestation of its cluster and holds them under the bombardment of its radioactivity, so does the soul. As the positive nucleus of man attract the atoms necessary for the manifestation of its body and hold them under the bombardment of the refining and spiritualizing influence of the spirit radioactivity. As we have said elsewhere, no entity can obtain mastery and final liberation until all the atoms for whose expression he is responsible have been redeemed. This includes all the atoms thrown off from all his various bodies during all his incarnations, as all the entities he created either with his physical creative force or by the creative power of thought. The fact that we draw to ourselves a vast number of atoms, which we have used in past lives, in one of the reasons, but only one several, why we in this life took and look and act so much as if we did in the last life. This resemblance is so great that in most cases, if our friends could see a picture of us in our last incarnation, they would instantly recognize it as a picture, or at least enough like us to be ready taken for a brother or sister. This also helps us to understand why we bring over so many strong inborn traits, particularities, aversions, and affinities, not exhibited by the other children of the same family, and therefore not merely inherited from our parents and otherwise inexplicable. We bring over so many influences from the past that it is no wonder that many persons claim to have been persons of importance in the last life. But these claims can readily be verified or disproved by a careful comparison of the pictures, and especially of the distinguishing traits of character of the great personage claimed with those of the claimant. While the circumstances of the present life may be entirely dissimilar, the stage of soul development or the lack of it, the most prominent traits of a character, together with the capacity and powers of the past life, will show clearly in this life, no matter what the environment. Abraham Lincoln was born into an environment in which all outward aids were denied him. But he demonstrated his greatness of soul in spite of his hampering environment. Unless the innate traits do show clearly and confirm the claim made, the claimant is surely mistaken, even if told by someone in the astral. For instance, the atoms which belong to our brain in the past and which may again be built into our brain is the life. In this life, although modified by the physical heredity of the family in which we now incarnate, would nevertheless enable us to exhibit mental qualities and powers similar to those in the past. A reincarnated Caesar would not exhibit the traits of a Nero, and vice versa. The reputed reincarnation of Pharaoh Akhenaten in the person of a young English engineer can be proved not by spirit messages or by automatic writing produced by him while under the control of some disembodied entity, but by careful comparing the traits, habits, and capacities of the two. Very interesting there. The brain is but the instrument of the mind, hence can we play upon by the lower mind and made to cater to the passions and appetites of the animal soul, or it can be made to respond to the guidance of the higher mind, the mind of the spiritual self or soul. If we refuse to permit our brains to be occupied exclusively with the affairs of the lower mind and refuse to build into them only the atoms cast off from our former brains, then the higher mind will have a chance to build in new and higher atoms in addition to those from the past, new atoms capable of responding to more spiritual vibrations. This will enable us to grasp more and more spiritual ideas until ultimately we can consciously respond to the overshadowing higher or spiritual mind and receive the guidance and outpouring of the spiritual ideas with which that mind constantly bombards us in an effort to inspire and awaken in us some conception of the God consciousness, and also an eagerness to strive for its realization and obtainment. For the emanations from the higher mental and spiritual worlds, as well as those of the physical and astral worlds, are continuously bombarding us, but they can be assimilated, and built in only to the extent that we prepared the soil by spiritualizing our physical atoms and purifying our minds until we can tune into their octave of vibration and affinitize with it. For man can, unlike the lower animals, have free will to select that which he will respond instead of responding automatically or reflectively to everything that contacts him. While intensive study of higher things enables us to attract to us the most highly evolved atoms of our past, which are in our environment, and build it in new atoms from this and the higher worlds, nevertheless, it is only the assimilation of atoms and forces from the spiritual outpouring of the Christ that it is the greatest factor in our spiritual advance. To advance harmoniously, body, mind, and soul, we must continually build in the highest atoms. We can draw to us from each world, just as the physical atoms of the earth remain in Pralaya and dormant in the mineral kingdom until lifted up by the cohesive power of the life force and built into the higher forms of life from vegetable up to man. So the spiritual atoms and centers in man remain dormant until awakened and animated by the bombarding currents of the spiritual life force of the Christ, who thus literally stands at the door of our hearts and knocks. Man's ability first to sense his great possibilities, then desire their attainment, and then consciously work toward it, enables him to transmute the atoms he builds in from former lives and from the lower kingdoms, and to dominate them no matter what their transmigrations have been, and make them subservient to the keynote of the higher ideals which he has set for his life's attainment. Just as the physical sun will ultimately rejuvenate and transmute devastated areas into selffulness, and beauty, so will the spiritual sun ultimately transmute evil and devastating vibrations and experiences in us into usefulness and beauty. This process of continuous transmutation, if preserved in, makes it possible for man's body to become so purified and spiritualized as literally to be a temple of the living God, through which he can manifest his real or higher self as the Lord from heaven and rule himself and all the kingdoms of the earth. Since man has the power to select and attract finer, this book, and more spiritualized atoms and forces from the higher worlds, and also transmuting the less evolved atoms he builds in through karma, and otherwise he is in very truth the Lord of the earth, as indicated in Genesis. For not only through scientific plant and animal breeding, but also through broadcasting into the lower kingdoms of the atoms, he has transmuted, and their countless transmigrations through the various forms, he can so uplift and improve the lower kingdoms as literally to remodel the earth and the products thereof, and redeem it from the curse of inharmony and disease, which his previous misuse of its substance and forces placed upon it. This is a great duty which he must accomplish ere his cycle of necessity in earth conditions is completed and he is free to progress to higher worlds. But this he will accomplish only as he advances and spiritualizes himself through the radioactivity of the cosmic Christ force. Often after death, those who have wantonly killed birds and animals for mere sport and not from necessity or from some constructive end, learn the lesson of cruelty in the next incarnation, are born with an innate revolt against all unnecessary suffering, and become supporters of it, if not enthusiastic workers for the prevention of animal cruelty. For ultimately, just as God looked upon everything that he had made and pronounced it very good, so must man be able to do so likewise, ere the earth can be redeemed from man's curse and again become the Eden of peace and harmony it was given unto man to dress and to keep. How true and grand in its comprehensiveness do we find the simple language of the Bible? The more we unfold and grow in comprehension, and the more we understand the details of the grand plan of the universe as set forth in the cosmic philosophy of Christian mysticism, the more do we admire and wonder at the simple language which includes so much in so few words. Most of us are but children in spiritual things, and as well might be criticized and take exception to the ABC multiplication table as to condemn the grand allegories of the Bible or the older religions and philosophy of peoples who have gone more deeply into the philosophy of life. Since there are many types of mind, many forms of presentation are necessary to explain to all types the one fundamental truth that man himself is responsible for, the conditions which surround him here on earth, and that because of his responsibility, by him must all be redeemed through his correlation with and radiation of the cosmic Christ force. We are so used to thinking of our spiritual life and its heavenly reward as pertaining to some far-off future that we are apt to overlook one of the most vital of truths. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. This influence of thought is not confined to the spiritual man or even to the mind, but reacts upon the body as well. Nor are the spiritual virtues all that we incarnated to unfold and manifest. If we look from a new angle of vision at the injunction, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you, we shall see that instead of crying out like children for some divine being to save us from the result of our mistakes and sins, bring about conditions we desire, we must realize that by our thoughts and actions and by the radioactive effect of our lives, we must perfect and spiritualize the streams of atoms as they are transmigrate through our bodies. Then, as they fly away and bombard all things in our environment and are built into the lower kingdoms, according to the infallible law that man must reap whatever he sows, they will send back to us a harmonious cooperation and spiritual forces with which we have impregnated them. This is the problem of redemption, as we explain in the next chapter. By redeeming our body, that much of the earth is uplifted and spiritualized. And that is the only way the earth can be redeemed. For every vibration of spiritual force to which the human monad responds, sending an answering wave of force through the whole cosmos. Thus, by man and through man shall the earth be redeemed. When it is once grasped that the working out of a personal salvation is the only way really to help the world, the man who neglects it is a retarder of the public good. And next time we will read Chapter 11, Cosmic Causes of the World Conditions and the Remedy. Interesting. And oh my gosh, we're here right now. We're doing it now. In it for When It Chicken Dinner now. Take in these words. Take in these words, because it's everything I talk about and so many other people talk about. And once again, this was so long ago, and they're just using quantum language in simplistic language. They're still using octaves and vibrations. They're not saying anything I don't say, and it's freaking amazing. Love getting validated. I hope you guys do too. And I know many of you do get validated by this work. So I'm going to leave it here so I can go on for an eon. But I'm tired. 7-hour live yesterday. Go check that one out. And I was on Turn the Page with Janine today. Amazing show this morning. So go check that out on her channel. Sending each and every one of you love, light, compassion, grace, shielding, and protective energy. Please go within, be the shoulder, be the lighthouse, seed your truths, light that path forward, and transmute, clear, let it go, and do you, boo. Till the next one, guys. Have a blessed and beautiful day wherever you are. Bye for now.